Okay, so in this video, we're going to start to build out our first web page. So right now we've got this default page. We need to replace that. So stick with me here. This is going to take a little bit. It's going to take a couple of videos for us to do this, and it's kind of a convoluted process, but after you do it a couple of times, it becomes very, very easy. So Django is what's called an MVC architecture, model, view, controller. And models, that's database stuff. We don't care about that. Views are the actual web pages themselves. This is a view, and controllers deal with that urls.py stuff. The controller usually deals with routing and things like that. So if you're familiar with MVC architecture, if you've done Ruby on Rails and stuff like that, it's sort of similar, but a little bit different. It's got sort of a Django flair to it, but that's what we're going to be looking at in the next couple of videos. So to create a web page, because it's an MVC architecture, there's several things that need to come together. So first things first, head over to our pages directory and our views.py. And anytime we create a new web page, we need to create a view for it. And so we can get rid of that comment. And to create a view, we just create a Python function with whatever name we want for that view. So if you're familiar with Python functions, great. If not, you might want to brush up a little bit on your intro Python programming. I've got a really, really good course here at my website, codemy.com. Python programming for everyone walks you through everything you need to know about Python. It's very, very fun and pretty quick actually. So definitely check that out if you need to. But to create a view, we just, like I said, create a function. So define and then name it. And let's call this the home page. So let's call it home. And we're going to pass through something called a request. And what's a request? Well, anytime a web browser calls a website, it's making a request to show a page. It's requesting that the home page be showed or the about page or whatever. So we pass in that request and we return this render, which is up here. We're importing this render module, method, function, whatever it is. And we need to pass in 3 arguments. First, that request. Next, the name of the template where we want the web page to be. So let's call this home.html. And then finally, this empty dictionary. And we don't care what this dictionary is. We'll look at this a little bit later, but just to tell you what it is, it's a way for us to pass stuff into this web page programmatically. So if we have another Python file we want to run and we want the output to show up on our web page, we would pass it through here. We'll look at that later on. So if we save this, now we don't have this home.html file. So we actually need to create that and we need to put it in a specific place. And I think we'll look at that in the next video. But this is the first step, creating a view. So anytime you want to create a new page, you just create a new function like this. So if we came over here and pasted it again and say we wanted an about page, well, we would create an about function and we would change it to about.html, etc., etc. So in fact, I'll just leave that like this because I think we do want an about page. So this isn't all we need to do. We need to do 2 or 3 more things, but this is the first step. Moving right along, we've got our views, but we don't have these files themselves and we don't even know where they go. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So let's see, go to our pages directory and right click and create new folder. And we want to call this templates, because that's what these are. These are going to be templates for our web pages. So inside of here, we can right click and create new file and then come up here and save as, and let's save this as home.html. And let's create another one, new file, and save as about.html. Okay, and now we see here they are, home and about. And for the home, let's just go home page, exclamation point, yell it loud, right? If we save that, and then about, let's go about page, 2 exclamation points. Very exciting. Save that. Okay, so anytime you want to create a template file, you just go through that same process. You just right click here, create new file, name it, whatever you want. So as you can see, obviously these correspond, whoops, where'd we go? Views. So this home.html is this home.html file. This about.html is this about.html file. So we're almost there. We've got our templates set up. We've got our views set up. Now we just need to deal with the routing, the controller, well, maybe this is a controller. I don't know. Django has weird conventions. Basically, we need to do the urls.py thing to tell our project exactly what sort of URL we want. So right now, if we went home.html, nothing's going to happen. If we go templates, home.html, nothing's gonna happen. So we need to explain to our app how we want to deal with these URLs. So head to our, let's see, our pages, urls.py. Now there's not much going on here. We pasted this in from our main urls.py a couple of videos ago. Now we need to flesh this out. So the next thing we need to do is we need to import something here. So from period, which is just saying like from right here, import views. And what that's doing is it's saying, okay, we've got these views with these functions, import these things into here so that we can do stuff with them, right? So we can access this, because our URL pattern is going to tell us where to go in the view. So we need to import the view so that we can do that. So pretty simple. So now inside of here, we can start to create our URL patterns. Now this is by far the most complicating, confusing thing in Django. It screws everybody up when they first start. So if you have a little bit of a hard time understanding this thing, do not worry. Everybody freaks out about this stuff. It's complicated. So in this version of Django, they've fixed it a little bit. In the past, we used regular expressions. And if you've ever dealt with regular expressions, they're a nightmare. I've been doing this 30 years. Regular expressions still make me sweat. We don't do that so much by default in Django. Now you can still use regular expressions, but by default they do something else. They do it a little bit different in this version. That makes it, I think, a little bit easier. So what we need to do is we need to create two URL patterns because we have two pages, right? And to do that, we create this path function, and inside of here we pass it 3 parameters. And the first one is just what we want it to look like in the web browser. And this is going to be our home page, so we don't want it to look like anything. We just want, when you come to this, we want it to show up. So you notice there's not like a home or anything like that, right? It's just blank, right? So in that case, we just leave this one blank. Now we need to tell it where to point, and we're going to point it to our views and our home function. So we just type views.home. And then finally we need to name this. So let's call this our home. So we put a comma, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it again. And so for the next one, what do we got? We have an about page, right? So let's call this about slash, so that here, when somebody goes to about slash, that page shows up, right? In the last one, we didn't want anything, so we left it blank. In this one, we want to do about, right? Pretty simple. And this one, we want to point it to views.about, because we're doing this about function right here. It's pointing to this whole thing, right? Makes sense? And here we want to name it. Let's name it about. And the reason why we're naming this is because in the future on the web page, if we want to create links dynamically, we need to reference them. So we'll reference this name, and you'll see how to do that. It's super, super easy. So if we save this, we're almost done. We have one more step. So this is the urls.py file inside of our pages folder. We also need to come back to our main urls.py file and sort of reference. We need to point this file to this file, right? Kind of makes sense, because when Django fires up, when somebody comes to our website, this is the first page that gets checked dealing with URLs. So it's going to look here. It's not going to see any about pages or any home pages here because there's nothing listed here. So we need to point this file to this file. Or to put it another way, we need to include this file in this file. So to do that, we just come up here to from django.urls import path, and we also want to import include. It's just a function thing that we need. And then down here we go path, nothing. And then we want to point this to include, and then inside of here we need to name this thing. So we're including our pages dot URLs, and that's just this folder pages dot URLs, which is this urls.py file, right? Where'd we go? Okay, and let's put a comma there and save this, and we should be good to go. So, okay, that was a little bit convoluted. There's a lot of moving parts here, but hopefully if we did this correctly, if we come back here and click reload, we get homepage, hey! And if we navigate to about, oops, you need to probably spell it correctly, about, we get the about page, hey! So all is right with the world, and that wasn't too bad, right? Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts there, and we did the URLs, we did this, we did the views, we did the templates, but really quickly, let's just walk through it one more time. For each page, we created a view, and we send the request, and we point it towards the template, we created these template files and put our HTML inside of them. Then in the views.py folder for our pages directory, which is this one, we created these URL paths, one path for each web page. And then we included this file in our main urls.py file with this line and this little include thing here. So not too bad. In the future, we don't need to do anything with this urls.py file for our main app because we've now included this, so we can get rid of this. And in the future, anytime we want to add another page, we do it right here in this urls.py file, which is inside of our pages directory. So if we want a contact page, for instance, we would just copy this, call this contact, change this to the contact view, name it contact, come over to our views, copy this, there we go, change it to contact, change this to contact, head over to our templates, right click, new file, file save as, contact.html, contact me, save it, and that's all you have to do. So now we can go to contact and boom, we get contact me. So very, very simple, very, very easy once we've done it a couple of times, and that's that. So links allow us to navigate between web pages. You've clicked on them a million times on web pages, and we're going to build them in this video. So I'm going to start out with some regular HTML links. So ahref equals / this will be our home, and a little pipe, and ahref equals, let's say about, and we'll call this about, and let's put a little line break or two to make it look nice. All right, so save this file, and I'm gonna paste the same thing in our about page and save that. Now if we come back here and hit reload, we have these two little links and we can toggle between them. Now we're on the about page, home page, about page. Okay, very cool, very easy, right? This is actually not the way you want to do it with Django, because here's what happens. Let's say a year from now, the boss comes in and says, this about thing is wrong. We need it to say about us. The lawyers tell us we need to tack on that us. So make that update. So you do, and we save the file. And now you come back to your website and click reload, and oh, this about page no longer exists. Now it's about us. Okay, what's the big deal? Well, our link still points to that about page, right? And if we want to change it, we have to go to every single link on every single page and change it to about us. And that's just terrible. We don't want that. So Django actually has a very, very easy solution, and that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this video. So Django has, I don't know if you call it a scripting language. It has a little way for us to sort of do Python type things on a web page. And we're going to talk about this more in the next few videos. But one of those things, one of those ways is to use curly brackets and then these 2 percentage signs. And so this is your opening tag and this is your closing tag, and inside of here we can do Python type things sort of, and some specific Django functions and things like that. One of those specific Django functions is URL, right? So we can call this, and then inside of here tell it which URL we want. So let's call home. Now all we need to do is wrap this whole thing in that href tag that we had earlier, and let's call this home, and I'm just going to copy this and paste another one. And instead of home, I'm going to call about, and let's change this to about. And so we can delete that and save this. And I'm going to copy this and just paste it onto our home page as well. Get rid of the old, save that. Okay, so what's going on here? What is this home and what is this about? Where did we get this? Well, remember back to our urls.py. In fact, let's change this back to about and save this. But there were 3 arguments: what the URL should look like, where it should point to, and this name. So this name, this is where this name thing becomes important. This is where we're calling this. So this home here, that's what this thing is. This about, that's what this thing is. So if this was about us, right, we would have to write about us in the name, right? We don't have to do that because that's not what it is. So if we save all this and come back here and hit reload, nothing really seems to have changed, except now these have been dynamically created. But the really cool thing about this is now if the boss comes to us and says, hey, we need to change this to about us, we make this change. Now if we come back here and hit reload, well, if we come back here to our homepage and hit reload and then click this link, boom, it automatically updates to point to this about us. Right? Very, very cool. Now, if the boss then comes and says, oh, I made a mistake, it shouldn't say about us, it should say about me. If we come back here and save this, come back to our home page, click here, boom, now it goes to about me. So we don't have to update any links anywhere on our website. It dynamically generates everything for us. and that is just very, very cool. So that's how you do links with Django. Very easy. And this sort of syntax, we're going to see this going forward even more. And there's another version as well. So you can also do double brackets like this and you know, pass variables and things like that. We'll look at all this a little bit later on. I just want to sort of start to point it out now. So those are URLs. In the next video, I'm going to talk about templating out our web pages even more, because a lot of times, most times, all of your web pages are going to have similar things or the same things. Like for right here, we have this URL stuff at the top of the page. Every web page has a nav bar at the beginning, at the top of the page. So instead of putting that nav bar, for instance, on every single HTML page, I'm going to show you how to template that out into its own page and then include it into each of these pages. Instead of creating a nav bar on top and a footer system on the bottom for every single page, we should just create that one time and then include that on each page. So that's what we're going to look at in this video, and Django makes it very, very easy to do that. So first things first, let's head over to our templates file and create a new file. And I'm just going to save this as, I don't know, let's call it base.html. This is our base file. Every file or every page in our website is going to have this code, right? So what code do we want here? Well, I'm not going to write this stuff myself. Let's just head over to getbootstrap.com. If you're not familiar, Bootstrap is a CSS framework. It's super popular. Like, I don't know, an insane amount of websites use this. It's totally free. They're on version 4.1 right now. It doesn't really matter what version you have. You click that button and head over to the quick start section here and scroll down. They have this starter template. Now, this is not a course on HTML, CSS, or Bootstrap, so I'm not going to get into this stuff in detail. We're just going to copy this real quick and head back over to our base.html, right click, paste. And what this does is it allows us to use all the Bootstrap CSS stuff on our site. Super easy. So if we save this, we need to do one more thing. So this is going to show up, and we don't know what this is just yet, and I'll show you in a bit. This is going to show up on every page of our site, but we need to define in here where each of these, the content from each of these pages, our about page and our home page, you know, like this stuff here, where does it go in this base.html file? And so I'm just going to navigate down to the body section. In the first line here, I'm just going to delete this, and we're going to use these curly braces again, and we're going to create a block. This is just a block of stuff, and I'm going to name it content. And then let's put a space here at the end. And then we need to close this thing, same thing. And to close these curly braces things, usually we type end and then the name of it, so block. So you can use these curly braces and %signs for all sorts of things. We can do Python for loops and if-else statements. So if we created an if-else statement, we would end if. If we created a for loop, we would end for. This is the convention, this end and then whatever the thing is. So if we save this, now we need to go to each of these pages, our home and about, and wrap whatever content we want to show up there in its own block. So let's go curly braces and let's go block, and we call this content. And then here, let's see, more curly braces, boom, boom, we end block. Okay, so save this. And if I copy this, I'm just gonna do the same thing on our about page. And let's do the same thing here. Save that. So now we need to do one last thing. We need to tell these files, hey, use this base thing, right? So to do that, it's again curly brackets. We just type extends, because we're extending the base file, and then we just name base.html. So if we save this, copy this, head over to our about one, do the same thing there, save that. Now if we come back to our app here and go to our home page, now take a look at this font. Look at the size and the color and the position. If I hit reload, boom, it all kind of changes. These change color. This font is obviously different. This is Bootstrap. This lets us know that Bootstrap works. So if we click the about, that works. Now we can come here and view the page source, and we see all of this stuff is now listed on our page. So we can see that it works. So very, very cool, very, very easy. And this is just sort of the tip of the iceberg of what we can do with this extends thing. And in the next video, I want to talk a little bit more about it, and then we will start to create a nav bar after that.